Welcome to my channel, INTJ Island. Today I'm going to talk about the ENTJ personality type. Today's the 30th of September in 2018, and it's only supposed to get up to be 58 degrees Fahrenheit today, so we're going to have a nice cool day. Fall's here, and I took my grandson out for a little walk Friday, and the leaves were on the ground, and he's one of the things he loves the color yellow. He pointed out all the yellow leaves on there. Yellow, yellow is on the ground. His birthday, we're having his birthday party today actually, but his birthday's in a couple days on the 2nd of October. But he'll be turning 3, so he's amazing. I love taking walks with him. He's so eager and interested in everything. But anyway, the ENTJ personality type has been kind of tying my mind up for the last few days. I had a suggestion by Philippe Rome and for this topic, and thank you, Philippe. I appreciate that. It has been quite a buggy ride looking into this. The ENTJ personality cognitive function stack is in a way the same as an INTJ as far as what functions are there in the orientation, excuse me, of the introverted extroverted side, but the order of the stack is significantly different. Although the top two functions are the same, they're flipped, and so the ENTJ leads with extroverted thinking, and it's only the second level where they run into introverted intuition. The net effect of this is that the ENTJ is action oriented. It's sitting around and just thinking about things is not for him. He wants to go in and make things move. In an unhealthy way, I want to talk about some unhealthy ENTJs and some of the stuff that they can do. First, they often talk about the INTJ being the master villain and the one who wants to conquer the world and all that. Now, if it's going to be, it is far more likely that an ENTJ is going to conquer the world than an INTJ. The ENTJ, some examples of that, of these power-hungry types, are Joseph Stalin, who murdered tens of millions of people, just executed them, just because he could, just to push his power scheme forward. In fact, he was the actual model for Big Brother in George Orwell's 1984. Even the posters were described as looking like Stalin, because he was the monster that Orwell was using as the runaway power symbol for a complete totalitarian government that would crush everyone. When they're not healthy, they tend to go their own way, regardless of the consequences to other people. They can actually be what you'd call psychopathic, but that's unhealthy. That's not a normal ENTJ. Napoleon Bonaparte was another example of somebody who's bound and determined to have his way with the world, and was willing to act upon that. And these were all intelligent men. They were all it wasn't intelligence they were lacking, it was empathy. And so I saw another example of this at a far lower level, which is still unhealthy, but at least it wasn't as destructive as these other guys did. But the website or the channel, YouTube channel, Sara, MBTI, and she has a great channel, by the way, where she uses video clips as part of it. She does a lot of other things too, but she uses video clips to show what these different personality types would look like in action, particularly unhealthy ones. In this case, it was an unhealthy ENTJ. Showed Alec Baldwin playing the part of a power sales mogul who was trying to push a crew into action, and he was brutal about it. And the movie that she had referenced was Glenn Ross. I had seen that movie before, and I really felt sorry for those guys. They were, first of all, they're in the wrong profession. That trying to sell real estate when you're I have done door-to-door sales. Back in 1971, I gave it a go, and I found out quickly it was not for me. But during my sales time, I encountered a course where the guy was saying that sales is the best paying hard job you'll ever do, but the worst paying easy job you'll ever do. And these guys were a pretty good example of that. It's just like they were struggling to get anywhere because they weren't aggressive power pushers the way Alec Baldwin character was, and so they were not very successful. And so they were all crying all the time about how hard things were and everything, and it was just kind of like a pity party going on. It was that whole movie was pretty sad, But anyway, another movie I saw that showed sales in a different way was a movie called Ruthless People, and one of the main protagonists was Judge Reinhold was the actor that played him, but he could put on a real show. He sold speakers and stereos and things, and he could put on a real show to make something that was not as valuable as the cost appear to be. Like, it's really awesome. And so one time this guy came in and wanted to buy speakers, and he just turned on the charm and whips out this huge stereo package, this huge speakers, and way overpriced, and he starts doing a sales spiel on it, making it sound like it's the most wonderful thing in the world. And then the buyer, he's a young guy, his wife walks in and she's pregnant, and he could see that they were not able to afford this huge package that he's trying to push. So he immediately backed down, closed up the speaker doors, and started directing them over to a cheaper price unit. And it confused the buyer because he was already sold to buy the big package. But Reinhold started talking to the wife, and he kind of directed them into a more reasonable direction. Now, this is something Alec Baldwin would have never understood. He'd have been angry that the guy hadn't pushed the big speakers on the guy. He's always close that big deal, But it's that would come from crushing the very bottom cognitive function in the ENTJ stack, which is introverted feeling. Now, introverted feeling for an INTJ, everybody talks about INTJs being cold, but we're only on the third level, and so we have to face up to our feelings a lot more than an ENTJ would have to if he set out to crush that, get that out of the way. It's a much smaller thing to deal with, and it is possible that they could kill it completely and turn into a monster like Stalin. Actually, Baldwin, the character he was playing, wasn't much better as far as the ability of having empathy. He had no empathy. He just wanted to crush everybody and push them along, make make him do what he wanted him to do. And there was very little concern about the ramifications of that. He's a bull in the china shop sort of approach. It was highly motivational in the sense of he was going to push people to do whatever they could do. But that's a world I really don't care for. It's kind of like living in boot camp in a way. You put up with it there because it's temporary. But if you had to live your entire life in that world, for me, that would be living in hell. I can't even imagine that. But the thing that finally shut me down on sales, well, first of all, I was selling something called Family Record Plan. It was a package where you'd get a leather-bound, fairly large leather-bound photo album. I assume my ex-wife still has it for our son because I got it for us. But the leather-bound album was really nice, and then it had room for 8x10 pictures inside of it. And the package cost $80, and in 1971 dollars, that would buy you like 266 gallons of gasoline. Today at $3 a gallon or more, you're going to get maybe a tenth of that. So it kind of gives you a feel for what the level of cost was to the people for the package. I went to one house. I knocked on the door, and it was a really nice lady. She was a young lady who was married to a college student, and they had a brand new baby. All right, and you could tell she was a loving mother. She just was so enthralled with her little baby, and I just love seeing that. But the thing was, she saw the program. She fell in love with it. She wanted it. Obviously, she loved her baby. She thought it'd be great to be able to get some pictures because part of the deal was that every so often they got to go back and take the baby's picture again so you could watch it growing up. And so it was a really nice way of remembering things with professional photography. And so that was all part of the package. And so she was excited about that, but they lived in a little small apartment. They had very little, and I could see they could not afford this $80 right now. I mean, they were probably living hand to mouth, and he's going to college, trying to get a degree so they could have a better life later on. And so I pushed not at all to make the sale. I presented it to her, but I did nothing to encourage her to buy, and I was quite happy actually when she decided that she just couldn't afford it as much as she wanted to. I was eager actually to get out the door because I really didn't want her to buy the program, which is, again, I can just see how that Alec Baldwin character would respond to that. But the showstopper for me, the thing that actually got me out of the job permanently, was one day we went down to the Hall of Records. We got the listing of all these different newborn babies, and so we got their houses, the residences listed, as public record from the births. And so I knocked on one door, and the lady answers the door, and I gave her my name, and I said, I have something for your new baby. That was my normal spiel. And she looked at me, and she said, "My baby died." And I just fell through the floor. Emotionally, I'm like, oh my. I couldn't, I'd never run into that. I hadn't even thought about the fact that I might run into that. I was real new at this. In fact, I was so new that my boss was right behind me, kind of watching how I did. And she just kind of looked at me, and I'm saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry." I really didn't even know what to say, and I was mortified that I'd done this to her because I felt so sorry. Here she already lost her baby, and here I am trying to, I'm cutting into that wound. And my boss behind me, he just says over my shoulder, "Well, do you know anybody else that might be interested in this product?" And I'm like, what in the world? What kind of heartless jerk? I was completely overwhelmed by that. I had no idea to understand how this guy was. I'm pretty sure he was an ENTJ, but I mean, he honestly just, and later on, afterwards talking to him, he didn't care. The thought never even of empathizing with that lady didn't even enter his mind. He was ready to move on to the next sale, and that told me I'm in the wrong business. I'm not big on worrying about trying to save the world and all of that, but I don't like to hurt people ever. That's just not my thing. I mean, I will avoid them. Sometimes I'm rude to them, but it's not like I don't go out of the way to stick needles in them, or in this case, a knife in them. I mean, that was horrible. That poor lady. I still shudder when I think about that. Uh, I have some experience with people who've lost babies in Midway Island. The medical facilities were poor. Um, Considering we're isolated. You have one doctor on the island, and it's a clinic, really, not a full hospital. I mean, they had quite a bit of equipment in there, but major stuff they'd fly you off the island to get over to a Triple Army Hospital in Honolulu. Well, first births they always considered to be potentially problematic, so they always flew everybody to Tripler for the first birth. And our case, my wife was having her first baby, so flew over to Hawaii and went to Triple Army Hospital. Um, the the birth went okay. There were some things. I mean, the doctor did some things that were wrong. I mean, the level of the med that they gave her to induce labor was, the machine was set up so it delivered 1/100th of what it should have been delivering all night. So she went all night without actually going into labor all the way. And the doctor that came on in the morning shift, he actually chewed the other doctor out right in front of me, that's bad practice too. But told him he had it set up wrong. And shortly after that guy arrived, they set up the machine correctly, and then she delivered within an hour or two after that. I mean, it was pretty quick. But anyway, I ran into somebody else years later, and he called it Crippler Army Hospital because apparently there was a reputation around the Pacific that there were some bad things going on there. I don't know. I can't speak to that. I just know that my son came out okay, despite that one mistake, and we took him back like 2 days after he's born. We have him on a plane, 2 or 3 days, and flying back to Midway Island. But he was perfectly healthy. Everything was great, so we were lucky. But the next 2 ladies that went in that we knew from the island to have babies, so shortly after that, both lost their babies. And one of them was very close to us. It was very sad dealing with the loss of the baby. I know how horrifying that was to them. And one of the things that one time when I went to play racquetball with the father of the deceased child, he was devastated that nobody would talk about his baby. I don't know. He wanted to be able to be proud of his son that was born and lost. And he says, nobody would ask him about his baby. Well, yeah, because they didn't want to hurt his feelings. They didn't realize that not talking about it was hurting his feelings. It's a horrible thing. So that knocking on the door and having a lady say that her baby was dead, I had no way to deal with that. But my boss had no problem with it at all. And so I guess you have to have a certain personality type, and ENTJ is good for that. They can move forward and not worry about the fallout from the process of whatever it is they're doing. If you can imagine business without sales, you can see what the problem is in a if you're dealing in the marketplace, you have to have sales. You have to have people selling things, and so it's like a necessary evil. I don't know, but it's not the job for me. I have no innate ability to promote what I do, to go out and say, hey, come look at what I did. Come get this. Come buy my book. Whatever. It's my wife. Her webpage. She's not big on sales either, although she could be. But she has a personality for sales for sure. But the thing was, when she was young, she had a experience where her parents sent her door to door to sell Amway products, which you aren't supposed to do. Amway says they don't want door to door sales, but they were doing it anyway because they were looking to reach diamond level, which they did actually. But they kind of soured her on sales. She wants nothing to do with that because all the rejection she got. She's a people person, and she doesn't like being rejected all the time, over and over and over again. So it soured her on sales completely. But anyway, but for me, that's not my job at all. I'm not geared for that, and it doesn't float my boat, so to speak. So anyway. But let me talk about the positive sides of the ENTJ. ENTJs are well, they're called the commander, or they can be great executives or field marshals and more. They can make decisions and make it happen because their extroverted thinking is. Creates a plan of action and pushes it forward. I mean, they're ready to go with moving forward with their plan, and their thinking is very sharp. They're intelligent, so usually they make quick decisions, but they're good decisions, and it works really well if they're like in a management position. As long as they have competent people and everybody's on board with what they're doing, it can be excellent. I've known several ENTJs who've been in the area of Master Chief Petty Officer (E9) in the Navy or E8s, Senior Chief Petty Officers. These people who are movers and shakers. In the enlisted ranks of the military, these people often are ENTJs because they are great at taking a mission and making it happen, and they're or creating a mission in the first place. From the top ranks. I mean, they're good at it. I worked with one in Massachusetts. And he was he could tell a story too. I mean, he made his drive into work sound like it was part of an epic like the Odyssey by Homer. I mean, very entertaining listening to his talk every morning about his drive into work. I mean, and he was a fisherman, but he didn't just go fishing for fun. He went out and did fishing for competition. He joined competitions and fish against other guys to see if he could catch more fish than they could, and win a trophy for it. I mean, it was that's the ENTJ type of person. They want to go out and get a pat on the back of some sort. Often it's money. They value fancy cars and big houses and the accoutrements of being wealthy. That stuff all matters to ENTJs. And I was thinking before I started this that if I think I'll close on that. It's been running this too long, but if you took a ENTJ and an INTJ, and each one of them, you put them on a mountaintop, the ENTJ would be on the mountaintop, was circled by his minions or followers or those subordinates or whatever you want to call it, and he'd be given instructions on how to proceed and what they're going to do in their next campaign or whatever it is. An INTJ would be on the mountaintop all by himself, thinking about the universe and what's going on and what's how to understand things. That's just the way it feels to me as far as the difference. The ENTJ is going to be involved with people and directing people. It's not so much that he loves people, but he wants to shape things to his will, his way of doing things, and make things happen. And he wants the pat on the back when he's done. The INTJ is going to see things, organize things, but he leads with his introverted intuition, which means he's going to think things over first and act afterwards. And with the ENTJ, it's the other way around. And so it creates quite different personality types, and the way they may end up doing the same job. I mean, like the ENTJ I was working with was doing the same instructor job I was doing, but he just had a different approach to it, and you could just see, that he had this. If he was going to step up, if one of the two of us was going to step up and take over the department, it would have been him. I had no desire to do that. I wanted to do an excellent job teaching, but he could have easily taken over the whole thing and run the show and been happy doing it. So, I mean, that was the difference between us. Anyway, I'm going to close on that, and if you like the video, please click like. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do, and I'll see you next time.